Okay, so I'm about to do the videos of the hearings and the body cam. The first one is from October 18th, and today is, October 18th, 2018. October 4th, 2018. Ain't that about a bitch? So, anyhow, um, I've been trying to get to this for like the last 2 days. I purchased that box on the 10th. Today's the 13th. And I originally planned on doing it in the kitchen. But I think I'm going to sit in the living room where I can kind of have my back against the wall because I'm going to need the press play and stuff like that. And like, I don't know if I just said that, but I was pent in the bed for like the last 2 hours trying to get up enough energy to do this. So it, it's horrible. Like, the attacks with science get really bad when they see me about to get to this. They'll talk and talk and talk and agitate and agitate for hours at a time, and then when they see me moving towards it, they attack with science, and that keeps me from getting to it. It puts me in the down position. So, and sometimes it's something like sleep paralysis. Like, imagine sleep paralysis, but being awake. Like, you just, you, anyhow. So I'm gonna sit against the wall in the living room. And the first one, like I said, is from, I'm gonna give you the exact date. Okay, so yeah, the 4th. Okay, anything, be sure to read the description on these videos. Anything that I can't make it a point to mention it, I'll annotate in the description box. So this has 2 tracks. Here's the first.
This is case number 2018 MI 220 in the matter of Victoria Oliver. Victoria, my name is...
Real quick. I spoke with 2 attorneys prior to this. The first attorney was just there to advise, and he was pretty much letting me know that, I had the right to even speak with someone that was out of the state, not affiliated with the hospital, and that was what I chose. And I chose that option in front of the caseworker, the doctor, and her 2 students. And I never got that second opinion from someone not affiliated with the hospital or out of the state. So that was the first red flag.
My name is George Worth.
Before this hearing, my attorney was supposed to talk to me then. He didn't talk to me. You're going to see the difference in my voice when he asks us, did I get a chance to speak with him? When he asked me, I kind of looked at the attorney like, and his chair is angled where it's like face, and he looked back at me like, bitch, I got this, like, and I'm like, no, you don't. So anyhow, I said, yeah.
I'm a magistrate from the probate court.
His name is Attorney Joe Perry. He misrepresented me. I had him both times. The second time he didn't remember me, and both times he misrepresented.
We are here on 2 separate matters. First is that an affidavit was filed in the probate court to determine whether or not you need to be in the hospital anymore, and if so, for how long. Second application that was filed with the court is determine whether or not you should be treated with medication over your objection. You understand why we're here today?
Yes.
Yes, you have to talk to your attorney, Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Okay. All right, opening remarks, counsel.
I'll wait. Same here.
Doctor, do you swear any testimony you give will be the whole truth to help you God?
I do.
Doctor, state your name and occupation.
My name is Shah Jalis. I'm a psychiatrist.
Mr. Perry, same stipulations, please, qualifications and records.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. So, doctor, when was the patient admitted?
So Victoria was admitted on 9/24/2018.
All right, briefly tell us the history.
So Victoria was actually picked up by the police because she was wandering in the YMCA. They felt that she was not in the right state of mind.
Okay, so wandering in the YMCA, you see this also in the paperwork. They've said that I was wandering inside of the YMCA. You can't get in there after hours. They said that I was wandering around the YMCA. They said that I was wandering, just wandering. None of that ever took place. So there's a complaint. There's a lot of supporting documentation that goes along with this. And you can find that information on my Facebook page in the folder or album that's titled Formal Complaints or Written Complaints. And it'll also have Suma's responses to those complaints.
When I saw her, she came to me with several papers showing me that the government is after her because she's the mother of Christ. She stated that the government has 10 devices, 6 of them are telekinesis, which she explained was magic. She also said that there are 4 devices which were put in her car by the government before they sold her on April 9, 2017. The patient also mentioned that there are implants, and the patient she also informed me that these implants let her know what's going on ahead of time, and that she knew ahead of time that her cousin will be killed, her ex-fiance will be possessed, and her mother will get in a wreck before it actually happened. She also mentioned at the end that she had a planner which was stolen from her that had all the evidence that what was going on.
Okay, I want you to see how ignorant they regard these type of matters, and how they try to undermine the individual by pretty much stating their claims in a very ignorant manner. You can imagine that's not how I communicated those issues to him.
So what is her diagnosis?
So, in my opinion, I think this is, I call it an unspecified psychotic disorder. This could very well be a delusional disorder. It could also be a schizoaffective disorder, which I'm not sure of, but certainly some kind of formal thought disorder.
Has she improved any since admission?
No, she hasn't. She has actually refused all the medications. She felt that she does not need to be on any medications at all throughout this time. Offered it to her. I offered her Invega. She did not feel that there was anything wrong. There was nothing that for which she needs to take the medication. I would like to add that her blood pressure was on a higher side several times during her admission, and we offered her at least as-needed medication, and she did not feel that that is something that she needed as well. I do want to mention some of the numbers here, which are pretty high. 10 first, it's 160 over 116. Then 10 second is 165 over 118. 10 third is 148 by 98. And today was actually the first day when our blood pressure was within normal range and pretty decent, which was 121 by 78.
Okay, something about the blood pressure. I actually kept track of it too the entire time that I was there. So I was able to combat that, but when I combated it off record. So you won't even get a chance to hear how, that was, I don't, how that was exposed, I suppose, that's something else, that they'll try to use to say that you're not in your right state of mind. That's the whole point in bringing it up.
Before we go further, you have offered her by way of medications Invega?
Yes.
All right, and she's refused?
She's refused. She does not feel that she needs it.
All right, along with just voicing the fact, her opinion that she doesn't need it, did she voice any religious objections to the medicine?
Not to me.
All right. You have...
I told him I was spiritual. When they brought up the topic, or when he brought up the topic of religion, I told him that I did not have a religious preference, that I was spiritual. And in the court of law, that's not recognized because it's not anything that they're affiliated with. They don't have, it's like treaties, having an agreement to recognize something. That's what religion is. So if I would have said I'm Muslim and that's my objection to the medicine, they wouldn't have had anything else to say. If I would have said I'm Christian, I believe that this or that, they wouldn't have had anything else to say. But they do not recognize spirituality.
Done a capacity assessment evaluation with this
Yes.
lady?
Well, we did it one, and I got a second opinion from Dr. Lewis, who agrees with the fact that she needs to be on medications.
All right, so both of you have concluded that she does not need, that she lacks the capacity?
Yes.
All right. Do you know whether she's taken Invega before? I didn't catch that.
No, she has never been admitted to a psych unit before, and there's no history of her taking any medications from what she told me.
Okay, all right. Now, you talked about PRN medication. Did she refuse that as well?
Yes, that was just meant for blood pressure. I
Okay.
requested her, please, that you can end up with a stroke if you don't take it, but she decided that she's going to wait and see how that works.
But obviously, by what you told us, her blood pressure seems to have at least leveled to a reasonable...
Today it has. Yes, that is true.
All right, so let's talk about risk of harm. Does she represent a risk of harm to herself or others?
As such, she does not, and she has not. She's a very pleasant woman. Been very pleasant throughout the NFPO, and there has not been any. We didn't need any PRN medications, any restraints, or anything like that. The only concern, obviously, that remains is the fact that if somebody, okay, there's nothing wrong with anybody.
That's some bullshit too. Pleasant, very pleasant, but you don't mind saying that everything that I'm experiencing is a lie, a thought disorder. It's weird. Like when you mention the government, it's automatically a threat. It's a lot of points against you. So no matter how pleasant you are, no matter how educated you are, they are going to discredit your word.
Being delusional and being in the community and being by themselves. So that's where the decision is, and that's why I came to the court instead of deciding it myself. So as far as any self-harm goes, as far as harming anybody else, she has not done anything actively that I'm aware of that was a danger to herself or others. It was this just pink slip by the police because of that delusional behavior. It felt very odd to them, and they brought her to the hospital. And I feel that it will help if she would take the medications and follow up.
So, where was this lady residing prior to admission?
She's homeless, as far as I know, and unemployed as well.
So what are you going to do with her if the court says she's going to be discharged? You're going to put her out in the street?
I don't have a choice, and that's why I brought it here in front and wanted you to decide. But in my mind,
They refused to acknowledge that I had an AMHA voucher. So this was all strategically planned. Like I had the voucher in hand and was actively searching, and I've noted that more than one time, and they would not acknowledge it.
in my mind, I thought that this is something that would help if the patient gets treated. But at the same time, you might argue with me that the patient is not actively suicidal, not actively homicidal, very cooperative. So that's a decision I could not make. In my mind, it would help if she gets treated. And if we open her up to CSS, maybe we can get her into the homeless outreach program and have some more services for her. Unless she finds a place for herself, which I do not know whether she does have it.
Yeah, let's go up the right. Cheryl, so what's going to happen? I mean,
Okay, so he went off the record without notice. That's what just happened. And a lot of stuff took place off the record. I said quite a bit, and I presented quite a bit of evidence, all of which was dismissed literally as soon as we went back on the record. You'll find when the ward was given an opportunity to add some of those things to the record, he couldn't even remember what took place. So instead, he turned to me. So let's go to the second track. These are out of order.
We're going to go back on the record, case number 2018 hold on. 2018 MI 220. All right, we've had a rather lengthy discussion off the record based on the doctor's testimony, the respondent's testimony, and the social worker's testimony. Mr. Ward, do you want to put any of that on the record?
well, I guess probably rather than I put it back on the record, I think the appropriate thing would be to follow up and ask, in light of this discussion that we've had,
Sure.
continue my questioning of the doctor.
Okay.
And then he can explain for himself, as he did moments ago, what his concerns are, and then we'll take it from there. And if the lady has something she wants to put on the record, that's fine too. But I guess I would, at this point, probably just resume my questioning of Dr. Jalise.
Okay.
So, Doctor, when we went off the record, I think you as best I can recall, you talked about, we were talking about the risk of harm, and you made it clear that she's not an active, she's not a homicidal risk or a suicidal risk, correct?
Yes.
All right, so then why, let me just ask you this in general, and you can explain. So then why haven't you discharged this woman?
So the concern always remains whenever somebody has some kind of formal thought disorder, delusional thinking, or hearing things, paranoia. It is a secondary risk, not an active risk, but a passive risk for the person to be able to take care of himself, herself, while in the community. And that was the risk that always is there. I cannot predict what would happen. I cannot tell that this is going to happen. That is whether there's a possibility, probability, sure.
So if you can read in between the bullshit, that's how they completely try to strip you of your rights.
Sure enough, there's a very high probability that she would not be able to take care of herself, and that is the reason why I help her.
You're saying that a 33 at the time year old woman who's taking care of herself her entire life, now because she hears the government talking to her, that she can't take care of herself anymore.
Now, you also, we had a discussion with regard to her blood pressure.
Correct.
And my understanding is, as a result of some pretty high readings earlier in the week, you have offered her a medication to address that issue.
I did.
She refused that medication.
Yes, and she
can, for a while, except with, from what I understand, with the exception of the reading this morning, the blood pressures have remained relatively high.
That is correct.
And so what is your concern in that regard? I mean,
so obviously that can say somebody with those high readings and not taking medications can end up with a stroke.
Okay. And have you discussed that with this lady?
Very, very clearly. And I actually begged her to just take the as-needed PRN medication. Then she said, no, I'm going to take the risk. I have good genes. I will take the risk.
And she's not been offered that medication since she certainly hasn't asked for it.
No. So I actually 2-3 times during this, every day that I've met her, I asked her, please, would you take the medication? Will you take the medication? And she was very clear in the fact that she's not going to budge in for taking any medications because she does not think that she needs medication. Usually her response would be, I don't do medications.
All right. But again, you became very animated about it, very candidly. But the point is that it is a serious matter. It needs to be addressed.
It certainly is a very serious matter and certainly needs to be addressed. So we're talking about here, if she doesn't take the medications, the risk of having stroke is pretty high. If it consistently stays that high, and then obviously with the delusional thinking, that could affect her, risk. It will risk her being able to take care of herself outside of the hospital.
Okay, now one thing that I just want to note to you is I've talked about remote neuromonitoring. That is a real phenomenon and is one that's within that government agencies use to monitor the activity. It's supposed to be for monitoring criminal activity, but it's just to monitor like pretty much those who recognize the government as a problem. So anyhow, with remote neuromonitoring, you can see thoughts as they form. That's what took place during this hearing. That's the government's weapon. That's how they keep you from making a valid argument in the court of law, literally every time that you step into a room for some sort of hearing. It will always boil down to how good the argument is. I've never lost an argument in my life until the government began to attack me and made it apparent that they were using remote neuromonitoring to jam my thought process or to jam my neurons. For example, it's also to see, they use it as a probing tool. So as they're talking to me, that's a form of probing. They're seeing how I'm going to respond to certain things. And when they see how I respond, they'll get that response and they'll block it. So that when this comes up in conversation, I won't be able to reference it. So there was a lot of things. Like I took notes probably a year ago on this. And it's probably in storage now. But like that's stuff that I would normally be able to recall easily. I cannot recall any of those things. It's plenty that I had to say about this hearing that I cannot access right now.
So with that being said, then what is your recommendation?
Yeah, so the recommendation would be that she be on an antipsychotic and she start taking I'm going to get a medical consult to get the medications in place for the blood pressure as well. And then hoping to open her up with community support services where there are more services available, and maybe opening her up to the outreach program, finding some kind of placement for her.
This is a team. You need to understand that this is a team. All these federally funded programs work together. They're there to push medication and to push federally funded programs. So no matter how much, I have to revert back to that, no matter how much I made it apparent that I have the housing situation under control, he's using me being homeless as his crutch to pretty much connect me with CSS. And the 90-day, they're all connected. The 90-day program, civil commitment, requires that you be connected with CSS.
So what's your opinion regarding her insight into her illness?
She does not have any insight into her illness at all.
And is it your understanding, I think I know the answer to this, but for the record, this is her first hospitalization?
That's as far as I know. I could not get any history of any prior psychiatric treatment or prior psychiatric hospitalization.
These motherfuckers
So do you have an
stupid.
opinion with regard to this lady's crime?
They are stupid as fuck. They are stupid as fuck, and they're in place to completely fuck you. They're stupid as fuck. There's no way you can explain things as crystal as day and someone deny them. You can't deny what's been established. It's like they're saying science doesn't exist, like they're saying magic doesn't exist, like they're saying physics does not exist.
All the formal thought disorders, if there's a pure delusional kind of thinking, that is the most difficult thing to treat. However,
Also, during this time, I was protesting. I was actively protesting downtown, and there were a few of the officials that were in the window that had a problem with me keep showing up too. So when I say they conspired in more than one way, and they had a marathon coming up that weekend. So this was like September 24th that this took place. And that weekend, the marathon was taking place. They did not want me showing up protesting there. So they pink slipped me for no reason. I didn't display. Nothing about my behavior was wrong. When I talked to the officer, he found me sitting in the waiting room. And matter of fact, let's go back a little bit further. Earlier that day, I passed in front of a cruiser that was parked in between the hospital and the YMCA on East Market, and I bent around and continued on. About a half hour later, like no one was inside, I came back. I went inside the hospital and I sat inside for about a half an hour. And then I went to the physical therapy waiting room. No one had any way of knowing that I was there, and I was in place 45 minutes there. Before a lot of officers showed up. Only one entered the room. When we left, there were 6 or 7 on the outside. There were 6 or 7 on the outside. And like I said, I've been in place, so they didn't find me wandering anywhere. And there was nothing about my conversation. The problem was I mentioned that the government was attacking me. And I went into demon possession also, which is a subconscious mind attack. That's something I can explain. A real phenomenon.
Is treatment available? How much of that she's going to respond to, I do not know. Only by her taking the medications on a regular basis and following up on a regular basis, and whoever follows up.
You don't see these motherfuckers pink slipping folks for saying that, they cousin, like, oh, I'm homeless and I'm sitting here because, my aunt just has too much of a Holy Spirit for me. Like, it was the craziest thing. The way that I explained this to this officer was in a way that he could understand. And that was like the end of the conversation. And I'm like trying to make my way and leave now. And he's like, no, I'm sure. He's like, come on, like, um, he tried to, that's what he did. He tried to undermine me. He was like, well, let's go to the emergency room, only because it's just a little bit more lit over there, you know, like, meaning that the lighting, there's more light there. And I'm like, okay. And we get there and he walks straight to the counter and like gives this, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's supposed to know what that means. And she was looking at him like, what? She even said what? And he did it again. And, you know, and I'm like, hold up, wait, what's going on? And he was like, oh yeah, didn't I tell you your dad called earlier? And I'm like, my dad, what are you talking about? And yeah, it was over from there.
Uh, Makes appropriate adjustments in the medications for them.
That was given us off the record.
But check this out. So back to that, my dad thing. So my mom and my dad, all my relatives know I'm homeless, but ain't nobody opened up their place. But you calling the hospital acting like you trying to dime me out. Y'all mad because I'm noting your unfavorable behavior as what it is. And this is something that they cannot get away from. With me, it's always been about behavior my entire life. This isn't new. I've always talked about certain bloodlines ain't meant to be mixed. I've always talked about behavior. What you will and you won't do, what you can and you cannot bring yourself to do. And I ain't never tolerated it.
For some reason she believes that she made those statements earlier. You recall her saying those things? She believed that her DNA perhaps contributes to her perhaps maybe being along the lines of being in the birth line of Christ.
Okay, sure.
Can you agree with me, Doctor, it's not so delusional if she had those beliefs?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And if she's had those beliefs, again, she's given you a rational basis that she believes that those things might be true. Is that fair to say?
Right, that's what the delusional thinking is.
Okay. And again, in your mind it's delusional because just taking the phrase, I am the mother of Christ, is quite different than saying, my bloodline may be the same as Christ's predecessors.
Right, it can be true. You see, we take into account several things that happen at the same time. So that's one part of it. You're trying to make it a little different and trying to figure out whether it is delusional or not. Okay, I'll agree. It may not be delusional, maybe.
Okay.
How about the implants? Where are the implants coming from?
Sure.
How is the fact that she knew ahead of time, this was going to be preserved, that is going to get into wreck, somebody is going to die. So those things are taken into account when you take it as a whole, not necessarily one little thing that may make some logic. And if you argue with me and say, oh, is it completely illogical? Maybe not. But taking into account all of them together, by all means, that's a delusional thinking.
So looking at everything as a whole, causes you believe she has some delusional beliefs in her mind.
That is true.
And you combine that with her physical aspect of high blood pressure.
No, I don't combine that with the physical aspect of blood pressure at all. That's a completely different thing.
Okay.
Having blood pressure, having delusional thing do not combine together. The only thing that I worry about is the fact that having blood pressure for whatever reason and being consistently high needs to be treated. And understanding that this does not need any help is not necessarily the best way to go. That's one part of it which is completely different. People may decide not to take the medication and die, fine, they can. Compared to the delusional process that we are talking about, which in turn at the end, after she's discharged, not being able to take care of herself, not having a place to go, and any services that are available that are not provided to her. So that's where it all comes into play, where I have a very strong opinion about the fact that if she gets help, there's a probability that she might improve. How much, I do not know. But if that's available, it may be a good thing, in good interest from my perspective for her to have those treatment and medications available and whatever services are available for her
Do you
to be
see
able
how
to
there's no
utilize
point
it.
in this?
Doctor, we don't know what Miss Oliver's condition was prior to her being picked up, I believe on the 24th of September, is that fair?
That is true.
Because she's had no history of treatment for high blood pressure, as far as you know, or for psychiatric care.
That's true.
And she's 34 years old, she survived on her own, as far as you know, for that length of time.
True.
And since she's been here, you've even said before, her condition has improved.
No. We are talking about two completely different things, my friend. Please don't mix it up. Blood pressure is a very different thing. I just added to it to make sure that you understand that the patient is refusing medications with an understanding that she does not need it, which is very, very different. The delusional thinking has not improved at all.
Okay.
That needs to be tweeted.
Doctor, I'm looking at your affidavit that was signed by you, and it indicates that there's a history of lack of compliance by Ms. Oliver with medications.
True.
And that's not in.
And what I meant by that is when I filled the affidavit that she was refusing the medications, and I might have worded it wrong, and that's what I meant.
Okay, but the X mark says history of lack of compliance in the last 36 or 48 months, and that's not true, is it?
No. All what I meant was that the patient has not been taking the medication at this time, and like I said, I might have written it in a
So
wrong.
what he's doing is he's admitting to lying on his affidavit, which was my part of my argument off the record, that just does not apply to me. So he lied on his affidavit.
That's what I meant.
But as it's written, it's not true.
Okay, yes.
Is that fair?
That's fair. Because I don't know anything about the history. I told you already.
Okay.
And what I said, Attorney Perry, Joe Perry, misrepresented me is because at the end of the day, all there is fact. So, in fact, you lied on the affidavit, which means that we shouldn't be here having this hearing to begin with. It should have been dismissed. And then to say that someone's delusional because they're able to trace their bloodline, how much the government and secret societies have put into making sure no one could know their bloodline. To say that that's delusional, that just doesn't stand up either. Implants. This is a real phenomenon. Alien implants, RFID chip implants, radio frequency. I told him that it debunks the mental health care field because they're radio frequency and they transmit a broadcast. The government is talking to people. And he noted it as a delusion.
Because there is no history.
Right.
And that's actually all I have, Doctor. Thank you.
I'm going to look at it myself.